to introduce you to Fitz and Anthony.
I was born September 23rd, 1993. At the time, my family and I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, because of my dad's residency. With 2 older kids, my mother was more than busy with 3 kids in 3 years, crammed in a 2-bedroom hospital apartment for residents. My bond with my sister and brother quickly grew as we all shared a bedroom for the first decade of my life. Even though we lived in 5 different homes spread out over 3 states in those 10 years, there was always one constant among them, and that was the fact that I could count on living within a 10 by 10 space with my favorite siblings. But I didn't always care for being the baby of the family. In fact, more often than not, I only received sympathy from my mother, which wasn't what I was looking for. More than anything, all I wanted to be was cool, like my older brother and sister, but instead they picked on me and beat me up on most occasions, or simply incessantly mocked my infatuation with my dirty rag I called a blanket. This constant yearning for acceptance and being the it child indubiously led to my elementary school infractions. My days of infamy began in kindergarten at the parochial school. It really wasn't even my fault, to be honest. My kindergarten teacher was no taller than most of the kids in the class, so she always wanted to exercise her dominance over her minions. I was simply the target on most days. While I wasn't the biggest badass of the grade that was reserved for Dominic, the kid would actually slap the teacher twice. I was sent to the principal's office before the second quarter ended. It was the first time I was sent down to Mrs. Concrete's office, and I was sweating bullets as I walked past the classroom my oldest siblings inhabited, thinking they'd rat me out to Mom as soon as we got in the car. But I made it in and out of old Concrete's office after 10 short minutes completely unscathed. On the long walk back to the kindergarten, I thought to myself, hey, that wasn't so bad, and then the landslide ensued. The principal and I became great acquaintances over the next several years I was at that school. But eventually I had to say goodbye to Concrete as I moved on to bigger and better things, like middle school. As I grew older, my love for learning increased. Even though I could be a handful in the classroom, teachers always commented on the joys they had teaching me. As I coasted through 6th grade, another wave of rebellion started to tingle inside of me. Maybe it was my 5 o'clock shadow that had intimidated everyone, but perhaps it was my superior calf definition as I strode the hallways in uniform. I'm not sure. Either way, I became friends with yet another principal. This time, it was Mr. Duffy. Unlike Mrs. Concrete, this guy didn't take guff from anyone. He shut the door and chewed me out like a man. I went home that day, not with remorse, but with hope, knowing I'd be changing schools in a few short months, and once more I said goodbye to a beloved authority figure. My small-scale rebellions carried all the way into my freshman year of high school in New Jersey, where I met my best friend, Tom Warford. Tom wasn't a grade above me, but we were living in the same dorm, so our time together was vast. Before the first semester ended, I unofficially moved into his room because his original roommate moved out. He was tired of our incessant shenanigans. That spring, Tom and I pulled more all-nighters than I can remember. Sometimes we would just chill out listening to some tunes while procrastinating on work. But on other nights, we had a more mischievous agenda. Once 3 in the morning rolled around, it was correct to assume no one was safe as Tom and I began on our path of mayhem. I won't get into what we did, but I will say it involved 5 32-gallon trash cans, a few feet of printer cords, and 4 unsuspecting boys. But it really didn't matter what I was doing, as long as it was with Tom. We were best friends since orientation, and over the course of that year, I have never been closer to anyone else. This made it all the more painful when I had to leave yet another school. Tom and I still call and text to keep updated, but that didn't take away the initial frustration I had when I was forced to move into a 2-bedroom apartment with my mother, brother, and sister in a foreign city. This frustration was amplified by my parents' recent divorce and my attempt to make new friends in my 6th school in 5 years. But like every obstacle I have faced and will keep facing, I kept going and things got much easier when I realized I wasn't alone. I found confidence in the fact that the people I once thought to be strangers actually had a lot more in common with me than I ever knew before. And so I'll leave you with this. Growing up is a wonderful journey, one that teaches you about who you truly are and what you represent. But if you keep your eyes on your destination, you'll miss out on all that happens in between. And once you arrive, you won't understand the value of the drive. And the drive is all that matters, because we're all headed to the same destination.
I was born May 1st, 1994, to immigrants' parents originating from Rwanda and Congo. Whenever I mention this, I confuse a lot of people. They want to know if I speak any other languages or if I have any memories from my childhood that can satisfy their hunger in becoming friends with perhaps an exotic foreigner. Well, I can't find my way around a conversation with French-speaking people, and I have been able to manage my French classes. But beyond that, I have no other connection to my native culture. Right about now, you're probably thinking, why have I never known this before? Or you have other questions pertaining to my family, home life, you know, me in general. I'll get to that. But first things first, my conception. Years ago, while my mom was working as an administrative assistant for a company that imported goods from Europe, my father was working in a company that regulated and monitored business taxes. They met each other at my mother's place of business, and needless to say, my father laid down the vernacular for what would be the grounds of my future conception. And there I was, a glimmer of hope shining in my father's eyes as he looked at my mother. They both knew at this moment they were going to release a fearsome force onto the world. A combination of my mother's wit and my father's diligence. The recipe, as we later find out, for an offspring capable of excelling in school, but instead, since he decides to use his powers for evil, exceeding in the bare minimum, with flair. Born in between an older sister and a younger brother, this middle child would thoroughly be tested through the trials of life, both at home and out, in ways he would forget as soon as they were learned, which would make learning these lessons frequent and repetitive. Okay, so there we were and I was born, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to the good stuff. I never really met my complete extended family, which sounds strange until you realize that my mother had 11 siblings and my father had 12. Yeah, a regular circus show. My mom tells me these stories about how different life was for her growing up, how her father really valued education and had to travel more than 20 miles every day just to go to school, or how he built his house with his own two hands. But these stories only help further distinguish the differences between her family growing up and our family. I'm not saying my family wasn't as exciting as hers growing up, we were just different. I was the middle child in a family of 5, including my parents. I had an older sister who was really into soccer, Usher, and the Backstreet Boys, and a younger brother who was all about useless sports facts and video games. I was more of the type that enjoyed a company of friends and was easily influenced by the type of music they listened to and the activities they participated in for recreation. So over the years, I've participated in a wide range and a variety of sports, from soccer to football. And I've changed my musical taste quite a lot as well. My iTunes library currently consists of any genre imaginable, from Natasha Bedingfield to Pink Floyd to Lil Wayne. This flexibility in my lifestyle allowed me to make friends from all social groups and has taught me a lot of valuable lessons about life, but we'll get to that later. As far back as I can remember, around the time I was in 4th grade, I had an insatiable appetite for making friends and being the kid who anyone could easily talk to and relate with. This personality trait blessed me with multiple friends, but has also gotten me into a lot of trouble since I was easily influenced by the admiration of my colleagues. Basically, I would get into trouble while attempting to humor my friends. This would be a consistent part of my lifestyle until I matured around the 9th grade. Now that I think about it, I believe that during my early teen years, I would have risked anything to be socially accepted by my peers. Also, my frequent change in schools put me in a position where I would have to be constantly making new friends, and this didn't help my personality flaw. I know this makes me sound like a bad student, but I was always an intelligent young man. I loved to read and write, and my teachers always commented to my parents about how much of a joy I was to have in class, even if I did get out of hand sometimes. Okay, so that's basically me as a student in a nutshell. Random fact, as a child, I enjoyed visiting my younger cousins in Lexington. I saw them as my younger siblings rather than an unseen extension of my family. My younger cousins couldn't be trusted to be left alone anywhere, since anywhere they went, destruction followed. And I'm talking about destruction as in obliteration of valuables, arson, and even physical endangerment to oneself. They spared no one and brought upon a mighty wrath that even the gods couldn't compete with. But still, I loved them, and God were their characters. They had the oldest one, Joel, who was responsible, although outnumbered portion of the group. Then there was the second in command, Maurice, who was the head of all things mischievous. After him followed the only girl in the household, Elizabeth, who had obviously watched one too many soap operas and lived life as an imprisoned princess searching for true romance at 8 years old. Benny was the youngest child, but at first glance you would mistake him as the head of the household. He strode around as if he owned the place, and commanded all in the house for whatever momentary pleasure he wanted when he saw fit. And him, being the youngest, always got what he wanted. I spent a lot of my childhood weekends watching these little guys grow up, participating in whatever madness they had planned for me. They taught me how to truly be an individual without boundaries and what it means to be a family. Looking back on my 18 years of life, I feel as if I've been adequately prepared for the future. lessons I learned on the playground, from the people who transitioned from friends to strangers, to the lessons I learned in my own household, from those with a different outlook on life than myself. I will allow myself to be informed by those I gave meaning and importance to, and from those who gave me meaning and importance. And so I leave you with this. Growing up is a wonderful journey, one that teaches you about who you truly are and what you represent. But if you keep your eyes on your destination, you'll miss out on all that happens in between. And once you arrive, you won't understand the value of the drive. And the drive is all that matters, because we're all headed to the same destination. So when Anthony and I noticed our speeches were on the same date, we immediately thought we have to do something together.
I wanted to talk about word history for 10 minutes.
And I really wanted to talk about my Bedlington Terrier named Mr. Paul Watkins for about 10 minutes.
We realized our ideas weren't working, so we went back to the drawing board with a new game plan. This time around, we decided to talk about what we had in common.
After a few lunchtime brainstorming sessions, we realized we had more in common than we thought. For instance, our love for procrastination and our exclusive status in the 2 Cookie Club.
In case you were wondering, we were always the first ones to receive 2 cookies on lunch on the regular. But as we began to learn more about each other, like where the other one grew up and who their parents were, we realized we had a lot more in common than we thought.
What we have in common is what everyone in this room has in common.
We are all humans,
From the garbage man,
to Bill Gates.
and
And not just anatomically speaking, but on a deeper level, our body and our mind experience pleasant
unpleasant emotions. Stress,
and serenity,
pain,
and joy,
peace,
and chaos. But we also experience times of indifference where we don't share any of those feelings.
Slowly, it became a reality that Anthony and I aren't the only ones that share this relationship.
Everyone in this room shares our same relationship because everyone in this room experiences the same daily struggles and triumphs.
Whether or not you believe in God, Allah, or even Santa Claus, doesn't matter. If you take the time to look around at someone you don't know very well, or even at all, you will realize you share more in common than you thought, because we are all connected.
So next time you're in morning meeting or some assembly, and you notice your eyes are fixed on a random student, take a moment to think about how that student isn't so random.
Because chances are you'll realize you have shared a lot more in common with that stranger than you ever knew before.
Thank you.